Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Planner's Knowledge Pop Up Podcast. I call it a pop up podcast because it really depends on when the authors are available. And so, when they're available, guess what? We pop up and we pop on. I hope everyone is having a great day. I'm super excited to have these two on the show. And we'll talk a little bit about how we met when I pulled them on. For those who are joining us, please be sure to use the chat, say hello. You can make your friendly comments there. You can ask some questions. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. If this is your first time coming, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back and thank you for coming back. And let me just tell you a little bit about Planner's Knowledge podcast. So here we interview authors and delve into the world of literature. Our mission is to provide a platform for talented authors to share their stories and insights with other listeners. From fiction and nonfiction, we explore a wide range of genres and topics. All right, and then you never know. You may be inspired to write, and that's always exciting too. And last but not least, before I bring my guests up, you want to make sure you have a pen and a piece of paper or notepad with you because most likely you are going to hear something that you want to make sure you remember after the show. You can always hit the replay button and also be sure to share with others and be sure to like and subscribe. So today's show is so unique because these two are sisters. So I'm super excited to have Annie and Mary join us today. How are you two doing?
Great.
Fantastic.
Yes, I love it. I had the chance to meet the both of you first at the Collingswood Book Festival.
Yes.
And I was getting ready to go visit my grandson for the very first time. And I said, I'm going to send you all an email when I get back so I can have you come on the show. And so I did when I got back, but then I never heard from you. And I was like, oh my goodness, did I put the wrong email in? What happened? And as some would say, fate would have it. We ended up meeting each other again at the Bridgeton Library.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I was so excited when I saw the two of you because it was like, I sent you an email, but you hadn't.
Technology.
Exactly. But we took care of it right then and there on the
Yes.
spot because I knew I wanted to talk to you further. I enjoyed meeting the both of you. My husband enjoyed meeting the both of you. And I just wanted to bring you on because your genre is one that people really love and enjoy. So as we get ready to get into that, let's introduce you. So, Annie, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself and tell them about your genre, and then we'll get into book details later.
Okay. Well, my book genre is horror, suspense, and science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And although I've been writing my whole life, when you have a career, you don't really have time to get into any type of craft, really. But once I did retire, I took writing courses, novel writing, script writing, and workshops about publishing, just to kind of guide me a little bit. And I just went to the community college to do these, small classes so that it wasn't too expensive. And I currently write horror and suspense and science fiction. However, I did start off with children's stories.
Really?
Yes, I started with children's stories. That's mostly what I had written, like even 30 years ago, I started with children's stories. And it was only 3 years ago when our mom was dying of cancer. And I just felt so helpless. Strong woman, our mom, in a lot of pain, refused morphine. I mean, she just bore it. And just to watch that, it just turned my focus from lighthearted children's stories into a little bit more of the darker side.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, the poem that I wrote, Lying Awake, that's in my first book, Three
Mm-hmm.
Deadly Shorts in a Poem. That poem, I wrote I wrote the first draft at
Mm-hmm.
that time.
Wow.
So that's when my genre changed.
Wow. All right. Well, boy, you just left us with a good place to pick up from, but we're going to hear from your sister first.
Yes.
All right, Mary, take some time and introduce yourself.
Okay. I work in full-time ministry in the local Catholic Church. So I am working full-time, but I still find time to write.
Mm-hmm.
And my genre is paranormal romance from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning to the end, although I will stick some other types of genres in there, but there's always going to be romance in whatever I
Mm-hmm.
write. I love romance. I like paranormal romance because I can create new worlds with magic and my own magic system and play around with the characters and put
Mm-hmm.
twists with the magic in it so they do something different. They still have wants and desires of a regular person. They still make mistakes like a regular person, but they do it with magic.
Uh-huh.
And
I
also,
love that.
thank you. Also, like my sister Annie, I wrote children's stories for my friends, and there was always an element of magic.
Okay.
But when Mom died, I was depressed,
Mm-hmm.
and I just looked at myself and I said I have to find my happy again
Mm-hmm.
because it was really bothering me how depressed I was, and
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to finish a novel from beginning to end.
Okay.
So then a few months later, I did. In 3 months, I wrote the book that I have out now. And
Wow.
then my next goal was to publish. And now that I've done that, I'm going to keep going.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you both, well, we have Leslie has a comment that she put. She said, Annie, that's so interesting. So our audience is listening and taking it in. Tell me this. So you two both have a history of writing. Mary, when did you start writing? What's your first memory of writing?
Our mom, when we were little,
Hmm.
would write a paragraph about anything you could think of. And then she would pass it to Annie and I, and we would
Ah,
each write a paragraph and we would continue passing it around until we had about 2 or 3 page short story. And usually
mm.
they were hysterical because everybody went off on their own tangent. So that was our very first experience with writing.
Oh, I love that. Annie, is that the one that comes to mind for you, or is there something else that comes for you too?
No, absolutely. It's one of my fondest memories with our mom is, that we would just write together,
Yes.
It was just, it's such a wonderful, when you think back at the time, you don't really think about it, but now as an adult, you can think back and say, it really can strengthen your skills in writing,
Hmm.
especially as
Hmm.
a child to start off with that type of exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what a great activity for people. So, parents, uncles, aunts who are listening, godparents, this is something you can definitely do. It's holiday time. The children will be home and or around. What a great activity for people to participate in. So, we thank your mom for giving us this idea. This is so good.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so you had this early one. I know for me, my first memory is about second or third grade. I used to write stories and I went to Catholic school and I used to write stories about why like the grass was green and stuff like that. And it all had to do with Jesus being clumsy and not putting his toys and things away. So
I love it.
That's so creative.
I
Really awesome.
and so I would then go to my teachers and ask them, could I go to the kindergarten and read my stories? Because it was preschool, nursery, and kindergarten. And they would always give me permission to go down and read my stories to them. So I was a child and I would do my own illustrations and everything. Now, my writing has increased. My illustrations still look like I'm 8 or 9 years old, but but so it was very interesting. And I would say one of my highlights, and I'm going to ask you as well as authors, what have been some highlights for you? One of my highlights was after I wrote and published my first children's book, The Reunion, which is the adventures of Froggy T and Bunny. I was invited to my grade school to read to all of the classes from first through eighth grade. And so I had separate reading opportunities with them. And so it was really fascinating. You talk about full circle moment, right? To
Yes.
be an author. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about being an author. So for you all, what are some highlights that you've had as being an author?
Well, it's so hard to choose that, because one of the biggest highlights is just Mary and I get together every Saturday. We go to each other's house and we just write, and we bounce things off of each other and we laugh and we just have a really good time. And because, we both just published for the first time last spring, that was such a big accomplishment right there, and such a highlight for us to be able to get to that point, because there's so much involved in it. But now, once you know what to do, it just feels like it flows so much easier now.
I agree.
So anyone out there who is interested in writing, not sure what to do, once you really get out there, and, feel free to ask us, questions, because we have at least some experience now with this. And it's just been so much fun right from the very beginning. So it's hard for me to pick just one.
Well, I love that it brings you two together. And that's something that your mother, as Leslie put in here, she said, yes, your mom planted a wonderful seed into the both of you. And it's so amazing that it's still continuing to grow forward. Mary, how about you? Highlights from this author
that
experience?
probably would have been my first one. But when we went to the Collingswood Book Festival, that was our first time going as authors. And we were there the whole day, and we talked and about our books. We met all these wonderful authors, including you. I had a sore throat by the time I was done. I talked so much. I never talked so much in my life. But it was so affirming, and everybody was just so wonderful, from the littlest child that came to our table to ask questions to the oldest person. It was just so much fun. I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I had Amelia Griggs, who's one of the authors, who was there. She was at the table right next to me, and I had her on recently. And she said the same thing, just being able to go to different events and meet different people, build those relationships and network. It's so important. So for people who are interested in writing, interested in becoming an author, going to events like book festivals can be very helpful, because you never know who you're going to meet and who can help and guide you along the way. And that's also why I love having these conversations, because there's always a nugget or two that someone mentions where it's like, oh, that's a good idea. So Annie, you've already done it, where you talked about taking screenwriting classes and other types of classes. Now, Mary, did you take any writing classes as well?
I did take some online classes, different things like scene writing, and I did those things online also. So yes, and they were helpful. You can always get, even if you don't follow exactly what they say, you can always get something out of everything you read or listen to or someone tells you.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And now with screenwriting, we're going to get into, because your books could definitely turn into some sort of show or movie or so forth. But let's tell the people about your books. Mary, let's start with you. Let's give them the title of your book and give them some background. What's going on in this book of yours?
Okay. Demons and Shifters and Me. Oh, my. So this is an author's copy, so it has a little thing across, but this is my book. And it's about a woman who's a witch, but she has an unusual power that's a dark power that's not looked on as good. So she's keeping it a secret. Her parents were killed when she was young. So her aunt took care of her, raised her. And she's told her she had to keep this a secret because they didn't know what would happen to her if people found out. So her aunt dies and she moves to a new town. The new town is all supernatural people, but still that dark power is not looked on as good. So she's trying to keep this a secret, except from her best friend who knows. And meanwhile, witches are being killed and drained of their power. And she's been targeted. So she has to figure out who's doing this. And then she's garnered the attention of the alpha of the wolf pack. So he wants to know what's going on. And he's telling her, you're my mate. So you have to read to find out what happens next.
Cliffhanger. Where can people go to get your book?
My book is on Amazon, ebook, paperback, or hardcover.
Fantastic. And I know we had talked a little bit about possible audiobook. Is that something you've thought about more since we talked about it that day?
I would eventually like to do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm also thinking about a graphic novel. Shout out to Alton Simpson, who we met at the book festival, and he does wonderful graphic novels. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm thinking about that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea. Now, I know you've taken some of your characters and you've created a journal. Do you have your journal nearby?
I don't.
Okay, it's all right.
But it has the wolf on the cover, mm-hmm. and then it just has blank pages with some pictures here and there. If you want to write your own story, you can write your own story or use it as your journal, whatever you like to do.
It's a really good looking journal. Like it would be odd for me to say it's a handsome journal, but it is. It's like, and texture wise, it feels so good. Mine is upstairs. I didn't even think to bring it down, but yes. And then you also have another book of stories as well. That's the one that my husband purchased. What's that one called?
Oh, okay. It's a microfiction book. So every day for over a year now, on Twitter, they have VSS 365, which someone, the host, whoever it happens to be, gives you a word. And then you have to make a paragraph. So it can be anything, romance, horror, anything you can think of. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing that for over a year, and I made it into a book, and I'm working on book 2 because I have so many of them. So that's also can be purchased on Amazon.
Wow, fantastic. And what's that one called again?
That one is, it's multi-genre microfiction.
Okay. I don't have that one in front of me because my husband has that one at work with him. So he reads it there. So I said, let me leave it there so I'm not blamed for taking his book. And speaking of book 2, Kelly McRae says, such an awesome read, Mary. I loved it. Looking forward to book 2.
Thanks, Kelly. Thank you.
So yes, so you have fans waiting for the next one. What is that like for you to know that people are anticipating your next book?
I am so excited. My biggest fan base has been the people I work with and the people at the church that I belong to and where I work. I was so surprised, and I can't tell you how wonderful that feels because I wanted to get my story down on paper or on the laptop. And for people to love it as much as I do, it just makes me feel really wonderful.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit more about that sensation of writing and releasing, because I know that's a big thing. And especially when you're doing a novel, there's so many pieces to it. But let's hear from Annie. Annie, tell the people about your book. What's going on in this horror and suspense?
Well, my latest book is The Darkness Within. And have you ever heard of Clive Barker, the author Clive Barker?
I have not. Do tell.
Well, he is a horror writer. And as a matter of fact, Stephen King, when he reviewed Clive Barker's Books of Blood, Stephen King said that even he was scared.
Ooh.
Yes. So I read for the first time during the summer, I read Clive Barker. And so he was my inspiration for the 3 stories that I have in this book, the 3 short stories, No Escape, Anniversary Dinner, and Confined. Okay. So, and they're all alien related. Very, because the alien scene seems to be very popular. So, so I went with sort of an alien themed book this time. If you love the gruesome and grisly, these 3 stories are for you.
Okay.
especially Anniversary Dinner. So
boy,
a little bit more to that than your traditional anniversary.
And as someone who just celebrated their anniversary 2 weeks ago, I'm glad we didn't have that book for our anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, goodness. All right. Now, you mentioned that book, but there are other books as well.
Well, my first book published is, I mentioned before, 3 deadly shorts and a poem. Okay. So the 3 short stories within, not quite as gruesome as The Darkness Within, but, the characters, they're pretty deadly, these stories, but, in a fun way, I like to say. Okay.
That right there will make me want to go read a little bit of it to go, okay, where's the fun part? Come on, Mary, you're her sister. Do you agree that it's in a fun way?
Somewhat.
My husband, Rick, would not agree.
He wouldn't agree. I think I'm going with Rick.
But I certainly enjoyed writing them. And as a matter of fact, I found now that I can, because I write horror, I can actually read horror stories now without being scared. Now, something like Clive Barker, I will go, ew.
Really?
I'm not scared to read his story.
Okay. Whereas I think I see his name now and just keep walking by it. I would, or keep scrolling.
They're very clever, though. If you like,
are they?
Yes. So it's not just gruesome. I mean, he does write gruesome stories, but it's very clever. I really enjoyed the story itself.
That's good to know. I'm going to check with my mom and see if she used to love to read. And then unfortunately she had a stroke, which impaired really her ability to read and track the way that she used to. But guess what? She's fallen in love with audiobooks, and she consumes easily 2 to 3 audiobooks a day, depending on the length, because some of the audiobooks are like 9 hours and 13 hours. But she stays up and she listens to the whole thing and she loves it. So, and her preference is always mystery, suspense, and thrillers. So I'm going to ask her about horror and see if she's willing to try that. So we'll find out. I'll let y'all know what she decides.
Wonderful.
But it sounds like Clive may be on the extreme end. So I may have to start her up with you and then move her.
Ease her in. Yes, good idea.
Okay, fair enough. Now, look, obviously, with you two growing up together, Mary, are you surprised that Annie writes the way that she does?
You're not surprised?
Well, she's very clever, so I don't know. I mean, the shows that she likes to watch, she likes a lot of those true life crime shows and things, so I'm not really surprised.
Okay. All right. And on the flip side, Annie, how about you in regards to Mary? Are you surprised that she has gone into the paranormal and the werewolves and the witches?
I would have to say I'm not surprised either. I mean, just based on the things that she likes, to watch, on, whether it's on television or the things that she likes to read, because, oftentimes when we, watch something or read a book, we talk about it to each other. So
yeah,
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now let's talk about this writing process. So you two mentioned that you go once a week, you sit together, you write together. Share with people, what is that writing process like for the both of you? Where do the ideas come from? How do you decide what characters are going to be in there? Mary, let's start with you.
Okay. With the very first book, I can't even remember where the idea came from. I mean, that's what I like to read. And originally, Rafe, who is the love interest, was going to be a Black Panther shifter. And I'm writing, and all of a sudden he's a wolf. And I thought, where did this come from? He apparently wanted to be a wolf. So there he is.
He's
but
a shifter.
Sometimes when we get stuck, I'll say to Annie, okay, what do you think should happen here? And I know this is going to happen later, but what do you think should happen here? So then we kind of bounce ideas off of each other and wording and things like that. So it's very helpful.
Okay. Annie, how about you?
Yeah, very similar. We just bounce ideas off of each other. I know, for example, I'm currently almost finished a first draft, well, maybe 2/3 of the way finished a first draft of a science fiction novel. So not quite as gruesome as the short stories I've been writing. And I know the end point of this book. but getting there sometimes is a challenge. So again, just like Mary said, I'll ask her, what do you think I should do here? And what do you think of this idea about doing this? But you know what? No matter what I plan to do and wherever I want to go, I'm typing away. And just like Mary's panther that decided to be a wolf,
yes,
my characters start just going off on their own tangent. And like, wow, where are you going? And most of the time, it just turns out so much better than I planned, and I'm just so happy with the direction that they're going in.
I think that's Mary. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
I've proofread that book that Annie's working on, and it's excellent. You're going to love it.
All right. So Annie, when are you do you have any idea of when that one may be ready for consumption by the larger audience?
Oh, well, I'm hoping for late fall 2024.
Okay.
At least that's my plan.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And to those who are just joining us, if you have any questions or comments, please be sure to put them in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can. You can also let us know where you're tuning in from. All right. So this writing process, I know for me, with the short stories, the children's stories that I do, there's the beginning, the middle, and the end, right? I know when it's a close, it's a wrap, it ties up nice and seamlessly. Mine are not novels, though. So how do you, Mary, how did you know beginning, middle, and end? And was it an end, or was it a pause because you knew something else would be coming?
Usually I don't do an outline. I'm not a planner at all. I start from the beginning and I work through until the end. And as far as Aria is concerned, there's a cliffhanger because there are two other books, which I'm hoping to get out spring, and then the final one at the end of next year.
Okay.
So that one, there definitely will be, a cliffhanger hanging at the end where you're going to try, so you can read more. But every once in a while, I'll think of a scene that is coming future, in the future of the book. So I will write that down anyway, and I'll pause where I am just to get that down. And then sometimes that changes though as I'm writing. So you never know.
Yeah, I'm with you, because the same thing. Ideas will come to me, and I'm like, okay, this is going to make a good book, and I put it in. I have a folder on my desktop that says my books. And then I'll start a new document and document as much as that comes out in that moment, and then move on to whatever else I'm doing. So I'm similar in that way. Annie, how about you?
Well, as far as short stories are concerned, I like to leave the readers by the end of the story guessing a little bit. And perhaps putting, just using their own imagination as to what actually happens. So I guess a little cliffhanger, if you will, at the end, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I love it when some readers come back to me, well, did you mean for this to happen? Is that what's going to happen next? Well, it's whatever you think, really, it's, we all have our own thoughts of how something would, we've seen movies like that too, sometimes, where there's just left with what actually happened.
Yes.
And sometimes, it's just, I kind of like that reaction. It's like, well, what happened? And you have your own, your own thoughts to that. So I love that.
Definitely.
And with the novel I'm writing, I do have this, and just like Mary, I just write. I tried initially when I first started writing to plan out an outline. But because, like I said, the characters just take me on their own ride sometimes. And I'm like, well, okay, so I'm just going to keep going and just put that plan aside. Maybe at the end, I'll look at the plan and see if I came even close.
Right.
Otherwise, I'll just, I just keep writing and, yes. And I can recognize the beginning, middle, and end, and hopefully other people will see that too. And I'm very, I do want to say I'm very, very, very thankful to also, not just to Mary, but to my writing group. Every other Monday, I'm participate in a writing group where we provide suggestions and appreciations, and it has been so helpful in strengthening my writing. I just can't thank them enough.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad that you said that. And this is why I tell people to make sure you have a pen and piece of paper when you're listening, because out of all the interviews I've done, you've mentioned, now you attend that writing group in person, or do
No,
you do it online?
It's online, yes.
Okay, so that's good to know. So that writing groups exist. And now, is this a group of people that you knew, or did you find it online?
I found it. I'm a member of Poets and Writers.
Okay.
And through that, I mean, there were so many writing groups, it was very difficult to choose. But from my perspective, I chose a group that only wanted, where the lead of the group only wanted a small group, just a small amount of people. And that's what I would prefer too. I'm more comfortable in that type of setting, whether it's in person or online. And it's very important for anyone who wants to write to belong to a group where the writers, they're also accomplished writers in the group that I'm in. And that's what helps to strengthen my work from my perspective. Because even when they're reading their own work and not providing suggestions to me at that moment, the fact that we're reading their work together, it helps me to learn. That also is a way to learn. It's just very similar to when you read a book in the genre that you want to write. You learn from that. So it helps me to learn by reading their work as well, because they are just such accomplished writers themselves.
Yeah. Mary, how about you? Any participation in external groups as such?
I didn't join a writing group, but I did join Critique Circle.
Okay, what is that?
That's a website that uses a point system. So what they do is people post their works, like you can do a chapter at a time, or if you have a short story, you can do a short story or poems, or there are so many genres on there. And people will critique it. And then once you get so many points of critiquing someone else, then you can put your works on, and people will critique yours. And I met a wonderful, wonderful author, Andre L. Carr, and he has been such a support. He formatted my book. He's given me lots of advice. Yes, he lives in Arizona, but he's a published author, and he's been such a great help to me. I don't really go on to Critique Circle anymore, but you can go on anytime, really. But that's a really helpful tool. People telling you their side or their point of view of what your story could be, and correcting grammar, whatever you ask them, they will correct.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the grammar, the context, right? It's so important. I know when I did my first book, The Greatest Soul Journey, my editor, she asked me, did I want her to edit for context, content, or context? And I was like, I've never done this before. Please tell me what you're talking about. And so she said, I can read it for fluency, understanding, wording, punctuation, so forth. And it was so helpful because initially there were some phrases that I used that were indicative of Philadelphia speak. But here she's an editor out of Florida, so the reference, she didn't get it. And I wasn't thinking from a local slang type of way of writing. And so I said, oh boy, I got to go back through and make sure that it's wider than just Philadelphia, because I wanted a wider audience. And so editing becomes very important. And I like the fact that she didn't know me, so she didn't know my voice. And I know sometimes people will choose an editor, they'll choose someone that they know, but that person knows you. And so it's like, oh, well, she was thinking this, and they'll fill in words that may not honestly be there. So what was the editing part like for the both of you? How did you choose an editor, and what was it like for you, Annie?
Well, aside from having people I know, like Mary, to read, especially for content, a person in my writing group Sean, I asked him to edit my work because of, I mean, anyone in my writing group could have done this, but I chose him, and he did such a stellar job. So he just looks for everything. Great. And so he is my editor, and he has agreed to be my editor for my next book.
Yay. Mary, how about you?
I did pay an editor who I didn't know for this first book, but for the second and third book, I'm using people that I know, Annie, of course, and Andre, my friend, and a few other people. I do have a friend who used to proofread as a job. She had a business proofreading, so she helps me with that part, with the grammar and everything. Good. So it's kind of a combination of friends and different people that I know. Yeah,
and I think that's one of the biggest things that I've found in this author's journey was that it really, you start to create and rely on a team, and you find out those who you work best with. So in my first two books, The Greatest Soul Journey and Live by the Spirit, it was all written. And so that was a different type of editing versus in the children's book. Now there's pictures, right? There's illustrations, there's writing. I need to make sure the pictures and the words match up. Is it conveying? And so I have a whole illustration team. We have meetings to make sure they say, tell me what it is that you see in your mind. Then they try to convey it in the picture form, and then we match up, and it's such a collaborative process. And I think it's important for people to recognize that building a team is a good thing. A lot of times with writers, I know that many times, I thought it was just kind of you isolated doing it by yourself, but there is a whole team of people that it's helpful to have.
Yes. And you would be surprised sometimes if the people that you've known for a long time, there may be someone in that group that, once they find out that you like to write, well, they might say, oh, well, I used to do some editing work or whatever, whomever, and you never know, you might make those, extra connections just within the group you already know.
It's the truth. It's the truth. Mary, thoughts?
Actually, I wanted to go back to what you were talking about when you were saying that you were writing you were from Philly.
Yes.
When I was on Critique Circle and I did a short excerpt from Aria's book, and it was a gentleman from another country who didn't understand the shape shifting into a wolf. And he asked me all these technical kind of questions, really technical. So I realized, well, there are people that read that genre and understand it, but he didn't. So I have to explain some things.
Yeah.
So I added that into my book.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it is helpful to get that type of feedback. I know, again, writing the first, and this is a question I have for the both of you as well. So my children's books they started out as a poem that I was writing to my mentor for his birthday. And I just didn't want to buy a birthday card. I wanted to do something different. So I wrote him this poem, and he always calls me Bunny because he says I have more energy than the Energizer Bunny. And I'm the bunny that the Energizer Bunny comes to for energy. And so I then say in the poem, but you're always hopping along with me. So now I dub you Froggy T because his name is Thomas. So that's where the Adventures of Froggy T came from. So when I write, there are a lot of experiences that are my own about how I handled things in elementary school, middle school, and so forth. And some of the storylines, like I have 2 books that'll be coming out next year. And one of them is a real account of something that took place when I was in the 5th grade. And so your characters, is anything based off of anyone that you know?
Who are you asking?
I'm going. It depends. Who wants to go first? Both of you were like.
Well, I'll go first, Annie. So my Aria has some traits that we have the same traits, but she I made her like this fighting. She can fight with her magic. She can fight physically. And I don't do that. So I thought, oh, this would be really cool because I don't do those things. So I wanted her to be more, you know. And somebody saw the cover even, and she has short blonde hair. And so I said, yeah, she's kind of based on parts of me. So that's why she's so near and dear to my heart.
Okay. We have some new people in the chat room. So show them the cover of your book so they can see.
Okay.
All right. So yes, Demons and Shifters and Me, Oh My, and the Darkness Within. All right, Annie, how about you? Anybody?
Well, I mean, like Mary said, there's
not there.
Which would you say, Mary?
I hope not if they're gruesome.
Well, you know, I just like Mary, there may be a little bit of me in them, but you know, not the, you know, I mean, I'm not looking to tear anybody apart.
Well, thank goodness. But
literally or figuratively. But I would say that I just there are certain characters. And for some reason, my mind more so goes to my science fiction novel, where Isa Scott, who is a seeker, and she's tasked with capturing aliens who are here on Earth illegally and making sure they get transported back to their home planet, Silas. And so Isa, you know, she is, it's like Mary's Aria. She doesn't really care about people. You know, she's a fighter and she's a loner for the most part. She doesn't care about people. But guess what? She gets stuck with an 8-year-old little girl.
Oh boy.
After one of the captures. And little does she know how this girl, Cassie, is so relevant to what is going on as she progresses through this story, through the arc of the story. So, so I, you know, again, the character Isa is someone, it's like sometimes I wish I could be like her, where she can physically fight. She is able to just tell you what she thinks right off the cuff, you know, and doesn't really care what you think.
Yeah. Now you two have talked about genres. You said you started out with children's books. Now you've gone into paranormal romance, you're doing sci-fi, horror, suspense. Are there any other genres that you're interested in tapping into, or that you've tapped into already that we don't know about?
Not for me, not yet.
Okay.
No, I still have so many other ideas that fall into the horror, suspense, mystery, and science fiction. Too many other ideas going through my head that I need to get out.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's something about, for those who are writers, and I'm sure it happens in other art spaces as well. I know for me, as I wrote the first book, and it was interesting because it was the illustrations that really opened. It was actually this picture right here, that when I saw this picture, all of a sudden it was like, there's life going on inside of this space. And what in the world is going on behind these trees back here? And it just opened my mind up. And next thing I know, 5 more books poured out of me. And it was amazing, the power of the illustration that opened that up, because I was literally just thinking this is going to be a one and done. I had no idea that 4 more books would come out 3 years later. And like I said, 2 more will be out next year. Mary, how about you as far as genre shifting?
Well, like I said, romance is always involved in my stories. I do have a book that has aliens, not similar to Annie's story at all, but they are from another planet. They look human. So that's about as far as I drift off. But after Aria's 3 books are total, you know, once I get the last 2 out, I have about 8 books finished that I want to edit and get out, all paranormal romance. And I'm writing about 14. So I kind of go back and forth. If I get stuck, I'll go to another one and start.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I had the opportunity to speak with S.K. Kaba, who was also at the Collingswood event, and she writes what she refers to as adult romance. Um, Another word would be smut. So but she writes it. And one of the things that she had said on the interview was that she was interested in trying her hand at paranormal. And so I thought about you instantly. So she said she's been doing a lot more reading, and similar to the both of you, she found some online writing groups where she will go on and try her hand. And she said this is where, in her current genre, what she did was she wrote a short story, posted it in a group, got a lot of positive feedback from that group, and that bolstered her confidence to continue writing and to explore more. And so she's been doing a great job independently, but then also was picked up by a traditional publisher.
That's great.
Now, you two currently are doing independent publishing, correct?
Correct.
Why did you choose independent, and do you have any interest in a traditional publisher?
Well, I chose publishing my first book on my own, mainly because it's just, 3 short stories and a poem, the first book. And, financially, it's just seemed more prudent to do it on my own. I'm considering the traditional publishing for my novel for next year, but I haven't decided 100%. Simply because these last 2 books, publishing them on my own has, worked out fantastic. Now I haven't experienced traditional publishing, although, in one of my workshops that I took several years ago, it seemed like, an appropriate route to take, but, again, just sometimes when you're retired, you have to think financially, there's, call it more costs sometimes in doing, the traditional publishing, at least as far as I could tell. So, so far this has worked out fantastic.
Okay. Mary, how about you?
The same for me financially. I had to consider, and a lot of the people, authors that I chat with on Twitter and the different social media, talk about the struggle with trying to find an agent and get a publisher to, for their stories. And I wanted to get my book out there. My goal is to write and now to publish. If it takes off, wonderful. If it doesn't, I'm still always going to write and publish. So self-publishing was the better route for me.
Yeah. And I would say the same for me. And I know at this point, self-publishing is so much easier than what it was, before. My first book, The Greatest Soul Journey, came out in 2009. And it was finding a self-publishing company to self-publish through. So, but obviously still easier than the traditional route. And then 2014, by that point, when I did my second book, Live by the Spirit, Inspired Thoughts, KDP was in full-fledged existence, and I could just upload everything. My husband, being a graphic designer, he did the cover, and it was just easy peasy. Now, then when I moved into the children's books and there were now graphics and so forth, I had to learn that. But again, KDP made it extreme. We should be doing a commercial. Hey, Amazon, you can pay us for this.
That's right. That's right, Amazon. I need your help in promoting my
books. Come on, Mr. Bezos. But they made it so simple. I mean, literally, right? It's click, and any problems, it tells you specifically where the problems are, if it's in the margins, if it's something, and then they're available. They call you right back.
Oh yes.
Right, so fast,
and they know the answer.
Yes. Yeah, it is a well-oiled machine, I have to say.
Yes.
And so it's really great. So I did the same thing for the same reasons. This way I didn't have to worry about an agent. And to your point, right, and now in this era of social media, you can do your own marketing and promotion and so forth. It does take time. We're not going to pretend like it doesn't.
Right.
It does take time, but you are able to do that.
Yeah, and I found, and Kathleen, there was such, back in 2009, there was such a stigma attached to publishing your own work.
Sure was.
And now it just seems so much more common. And I'm surprised at how much more common it is to publish your own work. And I'm so glad, because, I'm enjoying every part of the process, even though I just wish I could just write every day and just let me write, I wish I could, have another me and just, you go off and market.
That's right.
Just let me write, because that's what I really love to do. But even so, throughout the whole process, Mary and I, work together on that and help each other. And again, if you're somebody out there who loves to write, get a partner who you trust, as a writing partner, and bounce ideas off of each other. I mean, just makes it more fun to do that.
It does.
That's true. Mary, anything you want to add?
I think she covered it, but it's true. And I'm willing to, there are some people that told me they have kids who are authors, their daughter adults. I'm happy to help read a chapter, give them advice, help them with KDP, whatever they need. I'm more than happy to help with those things. So
fantastic. Thank you. Well, let's tell people, 1, how they can follow you on social media, 2, where they can get your books from, and 3, how best to get in contact with you. So Mary, you go ahead and start. What is social media handles?
Okay. So first I have a website, and it's mmarcellinowrite.com. So it's my first initial, my last name, Write, WRITE.com. So that's my website.
Okay.
And I have Twitter, which is Moses Chloe, together all small letters, no spaces. And my book can be found on Amazon. And as I said before, it's ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Okay.
Fantastic. Annie, how about you?
Well, my website is ahzamparelli.com. Okay. And so my website, just to let you know, my website was created by a professional group. Okay. So they did a fantastic job. However, I manage the website.
Okay.
So be kind when you look at my website.
Your website is beautiful, and I'm putting the sites in the chat, and then they'll also be available once the video goes on to YouTube. I'll go back in and edit the writing to make sure both of your links are there for your website.
Okay. And my Instagram is Annie Zamp. So if you go on to Instagram.com, Annie Zamp, ZAMP.
Perfect. And for people to get in contact with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Annie? And then Mary, same question.
Well, my author email is annietales007@gmail.com.
How cute is that?
Yes.
And can they access that from your website? Can they fill out like a contact form?
Yes, there's a contact form on my website. Okay. And of course, my author email. And my books, both books are also available to be purchased on my website as well. Fantastic. So you can either go to Amazon or you can go to my website for the books.
All right. And Mary, how about you? Best way for people to contact you?
I do have a contact form in my website, which I'm very proud to say I created by myself.
Very good.
Hope you like it. And also, please be kind. I'm still working on a few things, so I don't have a shop on my website yet, but I'm going to be working on that. But and they can email me at mmarcellino3, the number 3, at comcast.net, which is also connected to my website.
Perfect. Now, do you two respond to any direct messages on like Instagram, just in case people try to contact you that way?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. So there are multiple ways to contact them. Tell me this, audience, who would you say your as Mary you mentioned, surprisingly, a large number of your fan base are people from your workspace. What age demographic would you say that you've been seeing has been most interested in your work?
Well, actually, it's varied. People in their 30s all the way up into their 80s.
Okay.
So, and actually, at the Collingswood Book Festival, there was a young man who was, I know he was not 18 yet. He was younger. He was one of the volunteers, and he wanted to know what my book was about. And he actually came back at the end, and he bought my book.
Fantastic.
So yeah, encouraged. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm trying to remember, was it at the Bridgeton one where the lady came and bought something for a relative, like a daughter or a teenager? I think somebody came.
I think so, yeah.
Uh-huh. And so that's important to know for people who are listening, where you're saying, okay, well, paranormal romance isn't my thing, but think about your audience. Think about family, friends, neighbors, relatives who this may be their genre. Again, same with the horror and the suspense. Annie, how about you? Who have you been noticing has been your target market?
Well, it appears to be various ages, and of course, my books are adult. They're not for and they're not for children, obviously.
Would you say 21 and up, or would you take it to 18? Where would you start?
18 would work. 18 and up, yes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So but it just seems to be the whole spectrum of ages, adult ages from my books.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And Mary, how about you? What age would you say is appropriate?
I would say mature 16.
Okay.
Would be okay. Because I have some friends who have daughters who were mature at that age and could read things that I write. So
yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago there was Eclipse and all of that with the vampires and the werewolves and so forth. And I think that was more for mature age, even though I know some younger middle school students who fell in love with the series. But so that's important to note as you all are going to buy some of these books, that who you're giving them to or who you're buying them and holding them for.
Yes, it is the holiday season. So gift giving,
Yes, great stocking stuffers and everything else. Yes. Right. All right. Well, either of you, are there any upcoming events where people can come meet you in person, get their book signed? Anything coming up in the next couple months that you're aware of yet?
Right now, we don't have anything, but I'm in contact with the manager of Second Time Books in Rancocas Woods. And when they start their new season, which probably will be warmer weather, they have craft shows. And then this bookstore sponsors authors and has them where you buy their book and get them signed and talk to them. But we're also going to be back at Collingswood again, and then the Bridgeton Library again.
Fantastic. And for any updated event information, is that also found on your website?
Yes. That would be found there, yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, both of you, thank you so much for joining us today on Planner's Knowledge Podcast. It has been wonderful having you and, of course, seeing you and learning more about your story.
Thank you. It's been so much fun to be here.
It has been, yeah.
Good. All right, everyone, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for Ask Dr. Walls 525 on YouTube. I have another author coming up next Wednesday. Her name is Stacey Amon. She is a music therapist who has a self-help book and healing book utilizing different techniques around music therapy. So I'm super excited to talk to her. I may also be doing a special pop-up on Monday, the 18th, because believe it or not, it is the 3-year anniversary of my publishing company.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I didn't realize it. I was saying it the other day and I was like, oh yeah, it started in 2020. Wait a minute, it's 2023. Like, how did we get to 3 years already? So I have a busy day Monday, but if I can find some time, I might do a pop-up. So be sure to look out on social media just in case. All right. To everyone who will be celebrating the holidays, happy holidays to you all. Happy New Year to you all. And I look forward to seeing you again real soon on Ask Dr. Walls 525. Take care. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.